Scotch Shenanigans.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Building Levels with Sam. Now today I want to try something a little crazy. Gonna introduce a new element to the player and see if we can really get their head all topsy-turvy with it. When people look at platformers, they often think, well, this is simple. But today we're gonna get pretty complex. And that's gonna be using riffs, which are essentially our version of a teleporter. So what I want to do is have this feeling of the player of entering some, almost like a chamber or a temple, somewhere in the desert that's been forgotten. So rather than worry about the mechanical feel of this, I'm just going to go on and kind of build a few of these areas that I want the player to go through. Sometimes this is a perfectly effective way to build a level. What I want to do is have the player enter this room where there's a bunch of these strange rifts, strange cracks in the back of the wall. And they have to somehow balance and manage all of these, go through these different areas before they can win the level. That's the only idea I had. We're just going to walk through and see if we can make something fun out of it. I do think it'd be cool to send the player straight into the sky. Because what better demonstration of the power of a teleporter than to put someone on top of a pole in the middle of the desert. That'll freak them out. I think for the very end of this, I want the player to have to dunk a battery into a battery switch in order to power this final rift. Yeah. Let's give this a try. Turns out I put the bomb in the wrong spot. Okay, there we go. Excellent. Now, it turned out that didn't seem quite as difficult as I wanted it to be. By this point, the players hopped quite a bit. See if we can spice it up with a little fireball. Nothing makes things spicier than a wheel of fire. Now that I know the players are definitely going to be dying a few times here, well, give them a little checkpoint. Because all I want them to do at that opening is to feel that experience of working themselves into a cave of some sort that no one's been in for a while, but I don't want them to have to do that repeatedly. A good way to think about these checkpoints is to use them in a few different scenarios. One is when you want the player to not be annoyed by having to do the same mundane thing over and over again. Sometimes you'll see levels that I've made where there's campaign checkpoints almost back to back. It's just because I don't want the player to have to do something twice. That something could be as simple as walking into a grand temple entrance. Very cool the first time, maybe less cool the second, third, fourth, and umpteenth time. Now I've decided where the second portal is going to go, and I'm just kind of building out what I believe to be a nice package jump challenge. That's where the player has to throw the package down and then pick it back up. I decided maybe this other rift's going to have a gold door around it. And then for the grand finale, whenever that happens, we're just going to hide the end in a secret. The players don't even know where the delivery zone is. And again, Levelhead's all about building levels, so you have access to all these tools as well once you start playing through the campaign. I will say that rifts are very difficult to use and take a little extra consideration compared to normal items, because they give the players some whiplash when they teleport from place to place. So these come much later in the campaign. It's mainly to stop people from building things that are frankly just terrible too early. I want to help you make really good stuff, not horrible stuff. I want this gold area to be one about kind of climbing using the rifts, so kind of get that structure laid out. And then for some reason, as I do sometimes, I just decided that I want to shoot the player into the sky and make them run across a bunch of clouds. This is something we should talk about because it turns out that level design is a lot like cooking. The best recipes don't tend to have every single thing that you've ever had in your fridge in the dish. They have a few select elements prepared very purposefully. Level design is the same. In this case, frankly, why are those clouds there? Probably a terrible idea, but we'll go undo those a little bit later on. Now, I want to be the case that the player can do some light puzzling here. You see a big portal there, a big portal there. They're going to figure out how. How do I turn that pressure plate on? Once they do, I want them to get a glimpse of that final battery that'll give them the ability to exit the level. Sometimes it's fun to have some of those suspense-building elements where players say, oh, there it is, there's the thing I need, and then you take it away from them and make them ask the question, well, how do I get it? Now what I want to do is make sure the player couldn't actually purposefully hit those pressure plates. If they go through, the proximity switch triggers and shuts off the ability to access that pressure plate. What that means is the player has to find another way to get something in there to turn on those pressure plates. Puzzles in a game like this don't need to be super complex or super hard to make players feel like they're Einstein. And again, that's what we're here for, is to make people feel pretty awesome about themselves. After frustrating them almost endlessly, of course. Alright, so we're going to come in and add a little bit of a wrinkle there. Which put some bricks around that portal and make it clear to the player that they can't necessarily go in there. The nice thing about this is it allows us to kind of control the flow of the player instead of just having them walk into a room with 5 different rifts in it and take them all over the map. We're going to kind of force their hand a little bit. Get them to go into one place, then maybe another, and have their world kind of start opening up, almost like a child growing up. You start seeing all these things across the world, all these different cultures. That's the feeling we want. You don't want them to just be thrown into that whole thing from day one. It can be a little overwhelming. And again, sometimes deleting a ton of stuff is just the best way to go. Now for some reason I put a portal in the sky. I don't know. I was just feeling it. Probably won't actually make any use of it. A lot of people get kind of hung up when they start building things or doing creative work because they think that it has to be perfect the first time. The real secret is that the people who are doing this know that it's never perfect the first time. It's just part of the process. Working through it, there's no such thing as waste. You just hop in, throw a portal down, jump through it, see if it's good. If it's not, change it. It's all part of the process. And here I want the player to kind of start jumping through a couple of these portals and play with the portals in that sort of way of a mechanic. The fact that the way you enter the portal is kept, so if we jump up and through one portal, we'll keep on jumping up and through before the arc finishes and we come down. That means that we can, for example, make it so that people have to enter portals from a very specific area. So, for example, if they jump in the wrong way through the first one, well, they're going to hit their face on some spikes. And that is exactly what we want. In this way, this section of the level turns into a little tiny memory game for the player. They have to keep in mind the move to do as they enter a portal, and keep chaining those together over time. Now again, portals are hard to use because they require a lot of mental effort on behalf of the player, since they cannot see what's going to happen on the other side. To be really careful with these to not overwhelm people. It's easy to just whiplash people back and forth, but turns out maybe not the best thing. Now I know for this section, with the player to pop out of the top one, have to make their way over to that final place to get the box. Again, I'm not really coming in here with a plan as far as this. I just know that this sort of jumping through portals mechanic is what I really want to be laying on thick here. And usually that's all you need. A simple idea, a rough mental model of how to execute it, and then you just get in there and start banging around. You can't do anything wrong. It's not school. We're just here to have fun. And I play through levels very, very often. You'll see I flip into the play mode from time to time, and really that's again to send myself into the shoes of the player. Empathy is your number one tool when it comes to designing levels. You have to understand where the player's mindset's going to be at this point after making several rift jumps. Are they tired of you now? Do they just want to go home? Do you need to give them a little break? Maybe sprinkle some coins in there to make them relax a little bit, or just give them a breathing room. It's kind of like how in Dark Souls there's always a bonfire after something absolutely horrendous happens. Are you giving your players those bonfire moments? Sometimes they just need it, especially if you're doing something wild to them. The trick is to have an ebb and flow with the level of panic that you're inducing with the player or the skills required. Sometimes it's good to just make the player do a bunch of really intense stuff all at once, but if you try to keep that up for all of time, well, people are going to leave. It's fun to be challenged, but just keep in mind that a very small percentage of the population ever runs a marathon. Same thing in games. Try this whole thing, see how it's feeling. I feel like I've gotten maybe close to the end of this creation, but we'll check this out and see. And again, this is at 3 times speed, so the game is not this fast, nor is my hand this fast. I'm not a concert pianist. Sometimes you realize, oh crap, I just made it possible for the player to throw a key off of a cliff into a row of fire. That's not good design at all. That's why playtesting comes in. And it's also why in a lot of these cases these rifts are so hard to use, because things can enter them from any direction and go flying out at every direction that they enter from. To be very, very careful with them. Oftentimes I like reducing their size down to just 1 instead of big, which helps kind of control the total directionality of the thing. And then if things are ever going to be thrown through them, make sure you provide some terrain as a little bit of a buffer, such that the object coming through will always hit something before it goes, say, flying off of a cliff into a bunch of whirly-whirlers. Just kind of coming in, checking this place out a little bit more. I decided to layer in some coins. I think maybe this is done, or at least close enough to it. Now, typically what happens at this point is I'll go through and grab someone in the office, someone else from the studio, maybe one of my brothers who's programming something, and say, hey, I need you to play this level. I need to see what this is like for someone else who has no idea what's going on. That always happens after this final layering of dropping in coins, making it fancy, giving it a name. This thing, what should we call it? Rift. Nonsense. Close. No. Okay, chamber, yes. Chamber of... keep on hitting this random button until we find something good. Chamber of fear. No. Gear. No, okay, that's bad. Magic. Chamber of magic. Seems about right. Now at this point I went and did do that playtest I was talking about. Turns out the level's terrible. Now why would that be, you think? Well, turns out these riffs, as I said, are very hard to use. So now I'm doing is kind of cleaning this up a little bit and narrowing that player experience down to what I want it to be. In the previous case, what I had done was, by using all these giant riffs, was make it actually hard for the player to maneuver around them. So players getting snapped back and forth and constantly shifting the camera all over the place, which, again, starts constituting whiplash more so than anything. Players also didn't even realize that they had to jump up there, that they could. So, made a row of coins, said, hey, take a leap. These coins are a symbol of where I want you to go. And the other really important note was that when using riffs, you have to provide some additional visual cues to the player to make sure that they understand where they're going to end up. Riffs are very hard to keep track of because they snap you anywhere in the level. So in this case, I'm using this goo, not actually to make the floor slippery. I don't care about that at all. I'm just trying to visually show where the player's going to end up and help them remember it. It's almost like, as a child, if you were dropped off in a corn maze, and then you got to one side of the corn maze and it just teleported you into another part of the corn maze. It's never happened to me personally, but I'm sure many children have been lost this sort of way. Gotta provide some clues, some breadcrumbs, for people to figure out just where the heck they are. Trying this out a few times. And I'm realizing that maybe I messed up some of these portal combos here. Looking around, checking it out. Yes. What I want to do down here is actually make it impossible for the player to enter before they have the package. And this is just to limit the player's movement. You'd ask, why do you want to do that? Isn't open world genre the thing these days? Well, kind of. The problem is if a player goes somewhere they shouldn't, especially in a game like this where they could teleport all over the map and not even know what's going on, well, they're not going to have a good time. Again, we're here to make them have a good time, so sometimes you have to linearize the design of something. And that's just fine. There's still plenty of play to be had. This is feeling a little bit better. Again, making use of this package jump technique. Make it a little more clear to players that they're going to have the package to get through that by just showing the package cam. That way they know, okay, I know why I can't go in there, instead of having it just randomly happen. So one of my favorite things is to attach proximity switches as well as package cams to coins and then use those to guide players around. You can have coins appear almost at any time, and it really helps to make the player feel like they know exactly where they're going and feel really smart even though you quietly were leading them there the whole time. And again, I'm trying to hint the players to what direction they need to be taking in order to properly make use of all of these portals. And a big part of this was that during playtesting, I saw people were just kind of confused in this room. Turns out, memorizing the pathway 4 different times is a little difficult. So make it slightly easier. You can see I got a problem here with the package. And then to finally end this level, I want to feel a little more cinematic, a little more crazy. So we're going to build a big portal that players actually fall through right at the end, narrowly avoiding some spikes, and then have them fall triumphantly onto the delivery goal. Yes. That seems good. Get some additional signage, again, just to make things clear and help with the old memory lobes. Seems about right. Except for this entrance, which apparently I keep on messing up. But that's just fine. Just gonna move things around. Make it easier to grab those bombs and then have to actually move in order to do the bomb jump. Sometimes a movement of something just 2 tiles to the right is all you need. Turn this area into a nice little domed cathedral. Put some fun pillars on it. These don't do anything, they just look cool. That's 50% of the game here. A few final additional tweaks. Some collectibles, of course. And shortening up this section. After a few more playtests, I realized that was just a little bit harder than I anticipated. Again, stepping into the player's shoes is most of the battle with designing good levels. Let's take it for a spin. And that's the Chamber of Magic. Thanks everybody for watching, and hope I'll see you around. Levelhead's now out in early access on Steam, so go on and get in there and start building some happy little levels.